That's right, the ducks, the geese, the frogs, and the ant invasion has started. Spring has apparently sprung, and I hope you all take notice, it's also a full moon. And then there's the crickets. Now, you know, it's an inverted thought here about these crickets. I mean, the crickets are out there because there ain't nothing going on. And here's our problem, is when something's not going on, and we're being quiet, it means someone else is beating us down somehow, and we're not doing what we were supposed to do, as we were told was our obligation, to keep the type of life we wanted, or else lose it to someone who wants to change it on us. This is really a simple concept. I don't know why it's become so complicated and why there's so much discussion and or excuse. And at some point I realize I'm at really one end of this spectrum. But I've also said I'm here. I'm not isolated on that end of the spectrum of having done focused research and application, get the experience by doing what you read against what you find, and then get the wisdom of it and learn how to continue running with that new real wisdom, not the stuff you find everywhere. It's just information, knowledge applied. And so I'm on one end of the spectrum of being able to do that. And I'm blessed to be able to. And I've said that I will offer that to anybody so that you don't necessarily have to. And so to me, I look to the other end of the spectrum, which is people not being able to do much and or making excuses to not want to do anything or whatever. I mean, at some point I just can't, I have a hard time rationalizing when you decide not to do something or you make an excuse that you're not agreeing to have yourself oppressed continuously or someone else in maybe even different ways. And again, I don't want to sound like I'm judging that. I'm saying that's what the dynamic is. So even if you can't take time away, dedicate yourself to do something to stop any wrong that needs to be made right. Even to sit down for even 15, 20 minutes to write a letter. Put some thought in your mind as you're going through the day when you have absent time. Put your thoughts about how you're going to execute on what this thing is you need to do. And take some time to do it, just a few minutes. It really is that easy. And again, as I'm here, if you had a question, anybody has a question, they write me an email, markonthebeast@yahoo.com, and I'll give them what I think is their best, as quick as I understand the dynamic, the facts of the case at the moment. I'll offer what I think will get you the best start and footing to accelerate your ability to move without having to have all the knowledge and time built in that I have. I have it to offer, and I have offered, and I offer it all the time. So to me, there's no excuse that we aren't somehow, in all our ways, doing something, deciding that something somewhere is not good enough, and we got to make it just a little bit better. So I guess that's where I kind of begin it and end it, and I have a sense that I mean, it's not just a sense. This is a reality about what's up against us. There's people that want, these are literally parasites. There's psychopaths and parasites, and you really have to think about that. You have to almost put yourself in a drama, in a movie. Say, what is it, the Room or something? These people are at the door. They're not zombies. They're more like Dracula, and they're at the door. And if they don't get the door open, they'll get someone to open it for them. That way they can say they're invited. And then they're going to have their way with you, whether you agree or not, whether you have an excuse or you don't. And so in a way, I don't have a whole lot of patience with the excuses. I just want to hear how much time can you expend and what can we do to consolidate that focus and get you doing what you need to do, because it needs to be done. As I was listening on Ron Steffen's show on UCY.TV, the fact that we have to reduce it down to real simple terms. He's exactly right. People have no clue. And I'm going to have to tell you all, without sounding too, again, arrogant, even my listeners are probably, most of them don't understand actually what we're actually up against. And anyway, it's easy to address what we're up against once you just figure it out what it is. Don't make excuses that you think you know. figure out what it is, and start throwing your sticks in the spokes, even if it's just sticks in the spokes. That's all you actually need to do. It really messes these people are lawless. What they're doing, even in a country now without law, they're lawless, and that makes the difference. That shows them up immediately, even in this lawless state. When I say lawless, I mean you have no remedy for the abuse against you or those around you. That's what I'm talking about. When we have no remedy, well, it's over. I mean, now we're just in whatever someone can get away with. And those opportunists are there in a heartbeat. And then there's other things that have all constrained, that have formed up around us. As I say, we're infiltrated and surrounded on different styles of oppression and intrusion and usurpation and invasion. And before I get off too far, with the spring and the crickets, I'm reminded, I forgot to say, and this may be a little premature to say as well, because everyone will forget about it, and I certainly probably will, although I keep one little eye on this thing. It's a long time ago knowledge. I wanted to remind everybody, if you will, pay attention, mark your calendars if you can. California has been in a drought, as we all know. But a long, long time ago, when I was doing study on earthquakes, there was a pretty consistent problem around, not a problem, it's just an event that happens, it's an occurrence, it's a coincidence, and you can take notice of it. I've wanted to let you know, and I just remembered I forgot a couple times now to tell you. With all the rain that's been going on down there, I wanted to advance to you, and I don't know where this shifts. They've been in a drought for so long, I don't know what the aquifer did. As far as when it recharges, will the occurrence happen sooner, or does it happen later, or will it even happen at all this year and wait till another and subsequent wet water year, and I mean snow? That I wanted to pass the word, folks. This is it's not going to be for everybody, and it's only going to happen a couple times. But if you got in your mind, I'm always of the belief, if you have in your mind something's going to happen, you'll be a little more aware and you'll be more prepared when it does, and you'll be able to set yourself up. Hopefully, what I try to do behind the woodshed on all these other things, prepare yourself for a potential harm. That there was a large coincidence when I was doing the studies of earthquakes and trying to figure them out myself, and get to the point of maybe predicting these things. It was predictable that in a heavy snow year, that in August or so, there would be a couple of very large earthquakes in California. Now, that said, I haven't studied it for long decades, and a couple at least, and I don't know whether or not that's continued, because I told you the Banda Aceh theory, the theory I had about earthquakes ended. It worked for 30 years and then stopped at Banda Aceh. So I don't know what's still the dynamic, but I would ask you to be aware that around August, anticipate some fairly large earthquakes, and I don't know if that will advance into a month before or a month after because of the amount of drought. In other words, it's not the surface water you're looking at. It's going to be the charging of the aquifer that at a certain point allows the earth to slip, shake, whatever it's doing, the dynamic that occurs. And I don't know, I'm getting reports from Oregon that there's a lot of snowpack, and it did start melting with this warmer weather on the west coast, and it'll last for a little bit, and then it's going to go back to some medium temperature. We might actually get some April snows. But the water that is draining off in the northern hills and the mountains of Oregon, eastern Oregon, is not going into the drainages so easily. It's still being absorbed by the ground. So the aquifers are still charging. Anyway, be aware and put a mental note around August, and maybe, like I said, I don't know where it's going to shift. It may not even happen this year because the aquifers have not been charged for all this drought time. And I didn't really figure out at the time the dynamic of what was the causation. I just knew it happened, and this is what the closest thing I have. So we might be looking at some very large, where we haven't had any for a long time. That might happen this year because they had a big snowpack. It's not about the water weight, actually, which means we would be seeing it right now with all the dams filling up so quickly. It has to do with the underwater aquifers. In fact, the miners I talked to, they're concerned that water comes up out of the ground into the mine shafts. You might understand that. Well, mine shaft water has fallen many, many, many feet, and they're now concerned that water is going to start rising here come a few months. So This is that's the hydrologic cycle they talk about. One of them, this is the aquifer recharging, and it's been at an all-time low, and now it might be coming back up. So, again, nature is kind of fun to watch and interesting, and it can telegraph to us certain things. I don't want people caught. It's not like you're going to be able to predict. I didn't get to the point of prediction. I can tell you just the probability rises. And if you know that, and you know all of a sudden you're going down the highway around, at any time actually, and all of a sudden you feel that the earth starts shaking, if you can feel that in a car, maybe don't drive underneath that next overpass. Maybe stay off the road. Maybe get off the bridge. Stand in a doorway. Do what you're supposed to do. Get underneath a table. Get out of a brick. Go outside and look up. Do something. Because they haven't had a whole lot there, and all of a sudden now we got a lot of water, and it started to wear on me, and I wanted to tell you, and I spent a lot too much time telling you that. But here we go. What we have to pay attention to. And also, I'll just tell you, the probability raises up in the new moon, not the full moon. So, although the full moon triggered all the bugs to come out this week, so understand there is a dynamic, and the nature follows her own course. What doesn't follow her own course is man's imposition on man, and the lies that are told, and the earthquakes that are made in the political and economic fields. And I think we have another one coming. And I want to guide us a little bit, get our mind into certain things that we're not helpless to all this. Why I think you don't have to have a negative that you want to get made right. You want to have something made righter. And some of this stuff is completely neutral to any threat. And it's completely neutral to any time frame, which means that you can take the time it takes. Certainly better would be better, wouldn't it? But if you need to take a little extra time because you don't have the time to invest, there's always a decision you can look and devote some time to do what we need to have done. And you can do it on your terms. You don't do it because I can articulate it to you. You do it because of the way you find it. Now, if you don't understand some certain foundations, and those things that I've studied would help you and aid you. In other words, when you try to explain to somebody what's going on against them, you just got to tell them they just see the harm, and then you just point out who done it. And then you point out that they did it because those people that are being harmed now they took advantage of, being taken advantage of. And they have processes now that the people that are being harmed, let's say power rates are going up. There's a whole structure that provided, that was a fraud upon the people that would eventually pay the right rates, that were taken advantage of. And I think if you start pointing people to them, if you know that process and you can succinctly and clearly and summarily point to who done it against them, we might get a little bit more people interested. And I say that with a little bit of a tangential experience. I'm not doing it. I told you some things, people don't listen to me. This is a literal fact, and it's just the way it works, so I pay attention to that. There's a few people that can then speak what I explain, that on their research, they then speak from their research on the guidance that I've provided, and more likely than not, those people can talk to the people I can't, which is always an interesting dynamic to me. But there it is, and so you can make, over time, a very short explanation of the dynamic that people are up against that are putting them in the hardship. And so you kind of get predictive of the future. You kind of get being able to telegraph what's going on against people. You look like a magician a bit, but you don't promote that. You just tell them how the thing works, how this thing has been taken away from them. Essentially I can just put in a term for our sake here, because it has to be a summary discussion: alternative dispute resolution, consensus policy. These are the things they're doing. I talk about them all the time here. These are the main actors at this point, at least domestically, in your face, depriving you of your life, essentially controlling where the direction of your life goes. It's the future we want people. There's a process they use, and it can be destroyed. All you have to know it's there, and you don't have to have anybody know it. If they just want to get the monkey off their back, you just tell them who done it to them and what it's going to take to start to stop that. And so that requires that you have to take a little more time to research it. Those that listen to me, I suppose, are intelligent and have an integrity in them that can pull that together for themselves to help others. And that process it doesn't take that long, actually, once you get directed onto it. But one of the things that goes on, and one of these things that happens, it's this diversion thing that goes on. It's here, look at this while I'm going to do that. It's the magic trick. It's the pea in a cup. It's a bunko game. It's just messing with our minds, and we're susceptible to that. Again, Protocols of the Elders of Zion will tell us that we have fallen a fallen nature, which we're told in other places, but that there's opportunists and exploiters of that. And so you have to be aware that we can be deceived, and rather easily, it seems. And we're creatures of our ignorance. We're creatures of our apathy, and that's just us. I don't know what to say about more than that. We'll make every darned excuse in order not to do something, and we'll only really act until we're really forced to. And as I've seen, it's usually too late, and then we respond incorrectly. For the life of me, I can't get people, just generally, just to make the proper record for themselves to protect themselves. They'd rather walk in thinking they can swing the Constitution or whatever the heck they think, or their indignation or their arrogance or their obstinance, and they think that's going to work. And they don't realize that the reality of this world is your stuff only works until there's a bigger power to stop you. And that power is neutral. It could be good, bad, or indifferent. It doesn't matter. And if you don't have the organization to stop it, or you don't have some resource that you can pull on, it's over for you. And this is the reality. And this is not the world we were supposed to live in. This is the world we've allowed onto ourselves. Why I'm saying we each have to take some handle on the rope again, on this tug of war. We need a whole lot more people on our side. There's not that many people on the other side. That's what's interesting. So they're beating us down for no good reason. And a lot of it's just because we all want to be observers that can kibitz from the sidelines and do our Monday morning quarterback, then want to actually walk out to the field and break a little bit of a sweat for a while. And I say for a while, but we've been told it's forever. We've been put into a prison. We've been trapped into a place that we are not free from defending ourselves from an opportunist, an exploiter, a usurper, an invader. That's not my rule, folks. That's not my world, but that's the world I find myself. And that's the world you find yourself. And some people are living under a star and just things fall right. That hasn't been my reality, so I can't even relate to that. Some people can do that. But I don't see many people that can. They just believe they can and they're not. And so that puts us back into the place. What are we going to continue to allow against us? And what are we going to do? What can we do? And what decision are we making in order to make that so? Again, in how we get deceived and what's going on, what things are there for us to say. I just wanted to point out, and you saw this coming in Trump's promotion of jobs, and I told you that's exactly where we're going with our enforcement of our judgment. We're going to utilize that authority in him already stating he wants to see jobs to say, yeah, there was something that the Congress and the executive of the federal government and the state governments were supposed to recognize in land disposal. And because you've interfered with that in a criminal way, as a treason essentially, you made war upon the laws that allowed it, upon the people and their livelihood, you have now destroyed the ability to actually make the foundation of jobs, which then correlates to economy. In other words, the producers create the original wealth, which then becomes derivatized, if I can say this. The other economies derive from raw materials production. And when you destroyed that in a people, which I told you before we've found as a war crime to do that to people. Understand, that perspective came from a military perspective. But that's a war crime to do. Then you realize in the dire strait that we are when they come and attack your raw materials producers to something that every one of you benefit from, but don't quite appreciate, I don't think. And then we get this jobs creation nonsense, which is really, it speaks to the derivative of the raw materials production producers. The producers create all this other economy. They're different. One's in commerce and one's in production. One's tied to the land and one's tied to your activities of utilizing it. That we hear the report, and I think this is a warning, and then I have what looks to be a potential solution, if I can say it that way, which I think it actually is since it rests in the Constitution, that states are starting to move through, that some of you that don't want to that aren't really in a position to spend a lot of time, but could lend your discussion and lend your research and lend a moment or two and letter to encourage this thing. You can do these kinds of things to come around this part here that they're talking now that job creation posts blowout month in February Now, job creation is this derivative economy. They don't even look at the producers when you start seeing this. This is almost like the bean counter stuff, and that was my problem with all this, because I want to read the story. They're going to tell you that, and this is coming in on Trump's promotion, that he would bring more jobs, and so we're seeing this aids him as well. And I'm not saying that maybe certain things didn't happen here to make people think this, but the main question I had about how did 298,000 jobs get created where the government thought there was only going to be 190? How did those happen out of thin air when there was no motivation underneath it? And how are businesses be able to come out of their pockets when they haven't had it in order to create so many jobs over expectations? Is I think a deception right in our face to do the thing they're headed for, which is to raise the interest rates. Start to go. The Fed has to have a reason to go, give people a plausible reason to start raising the interest rates. They buried themselves. They got them into negative, almost right in negative territory. At least in a couple countries they did, and now they got to crawl out. But when they crawl out, see, that's going to bring, a recession on. See, there's going to be a price to pay now. And they're trying to say that your jobs are going to cover it. Well, it isn't. And my problem here, this is a cover story. And so then so now we're having a problem with the jobs. They're looking at e-commerce. What transfers commerce? What is the measure of commerce? But currency, not money. It's as money. It's currency. And the currency that we use is this fiat currency. It has a purpose. It's not really unconstitutional. But what people miss is the Congress intended this for whom? For the legal entity construction. And your income tax is about the legal entity. In 1913, in 1910, that act was challenged for the first time, and it failed because it didn't meet the restriction to the law. And in 1913, they got it through, because they constrained it to legal entity statuses. Why I keep talking to you about where's your due process where they determined you be a person liable, that legal entity liable to the tax, which is a corporate tax. Don't complain that it exists. Go find out what it pertains to, and as I tell you, you find out how you make the proper discussion challenge to say that what they're doing doesn't apply to a man or a woman. Now they're going to lie, and they're going to keep on their, like if you ask the motor vehicle code, about the use of the road, then they'll come back and say, if you drive, you're going to need a license. They'll never answer your question. I talked about the use of the road. I didn't talk about driving. I don't care what your definition of it is. So you got to look very carefully on their answer and whether or not it's substantive to the actual question you're asking. But we have to get clear in thought about this. And so this is a discussion that they tell us that there's going to be more jobs. Oh, now we get hooray. Where did all this money come from to start these jobs? What's the engine that's starting that on this full faith and credit that doesn't exist anywhere? Just because someone says so seems to be a big story to begin with, but they're trying to fuel the fire to raise the interest rates, which is going to make it more difficult on you all, and partly because I think we use fiat instead of insisting on the money, the specie I keep mentioning. And to that point is a report out. I thought this was an interesting reminder. I've told you before about the states being able to coin money. Now, is that my idea? No, I get that out of the Constitution. But the states can't print bills and emit bills. Bills, you have bills, federal, those are notes, those are evidences of debt. Oh, this is a debt system when you get into emitting bills. And all your laws are bills. They're evidences of a debt. No one understands all this. They keep talking about all the definitions. They don't understand how it applies. They keep talking about all the definitions and they argue and discuss how it's supposed to be and how I'm different than that, but they don't realize that the oppressor is putting it on you and how to take the specific definition you need and use that against the one who's trying to apply it. That they're trying to apply this commerce jobs through currency and the raising of rates, that it diminishes in values in the fiat, but never diminished in value in the substance or money or specie. And so all I hear, all these people talking, so-called alt media, used to be called the patriots, whoever you think you are, talking about getting back to wherever. It doesn't seem to seem I hear too much constitutional stuff talking a lot of this either. But you don't just insist, or instead of all your yakking, go and insist that should do the alternative that's constitutional. And so we have the report. If I thought it was not just my idea, and you think there's no one else doing it, well, if you need your little gang to work out because you need an example, it's happening. States consider removing income and sales taxes from the monetary metals. And there's a story here. Precious metal markets can certainly be volatile from week to week, but over time they are a more reliable store of value than Federal Reserve notes. I won't even go through it. There's a discussion. A very interesting thing that 20 or so states are now deciding that they're going to remove sales taxes on gold and silver. But the problem is that that's not actually the money. And I don't understand how they had the right, and this is an argument that would be a very technical argument that only a few of us would be able to provide, that it was a crime to tax gold because it's property. If you don't get this, you're missing a big deal. Part of the reason why gold is also valuable is its property. You're trading, exchanging intrinsic property to another property. It's an equal exchange of property to property as well as value. Measure, I suppose, not value. And so states have taxed the possession of gold. I've never understood that. Like I don't understand how there's a knowledge, a direct general knowledge that counties can tax or the state can tax your property. They can't tax your property if it's in evidence as a patent. They can tax it if they mischaracterize it, defamed the property by calling it a marketable property, ad valorem. People don't understand the very simple transfer. So here you move from legal tender, move into money. Your states do that. They have the right to coin, not print, coin money in silver and gold. I've been talking to you this over time. I don't get too wrapped up in it, but I mentioned it last week as well. There's a discussion here, and I found a mistake even in with these people that are adherents to the gold and silver to remove the tax on that, to allow it to be money. That's not the only way it makes money from state law, but, okay, so we got a good momentum that they said that there was, one statement said that the states can't coin the money. That's completely wrong. So be careful when you read this article, that you be careful to remember what the states can and can't do, and where are we going to check the objective basis? Not our opinion. It's right listed in there in the Constitution, from which this whole thing, your opinion notwithstanding of it, this whole thing devolves and rolls out on us. That if we go ahead and now move into our states and say, okay, states' rights, 10th Amendment, 11th Amendment, we have the power to coin money as the federal cannot determine. It's already been determined between the parties in the Constitution. Then the states start to coin money. And you use that instead of this nonsense fiat stuff. Why haven't we done that has been a real question to me. Why so many so-called patriots will rail about all this stuff and make a question of it instead of making it certain by putting it back in the law, making a provision to coin the money. Now, what's interesting about that is that brings the miner back into relevance and current, not currency, but current with it, because all the miners can come to the local counties where they used to do this. California, I think, was the last state that did this. You would bring your gold to the assay office, and they would give you coins back. And they would, for a small fee. The people took on the obligation of doing the minting from the gold that the miner brought in, and the miner would get the gold. The miner would go back in the town and go buy his food, or the silver. And there was a tangible connection that we've lost. And yes, it's a lot less. There's a lot less of it but we don't need much. I mean, you work your day-to-days in silver coin, and you work your investment. You store your value in gold coin. And then I kind of like the idea, since I don't know it so much, but it sounded very consistent with what we needed to do to keep value, is the Von Nauten guy here that tried the Liberty coin. Don't worry about that, what he did there in Liberty. Have the states apply it for adjusting value in the same coin, so we don't have this problem of looking at a $20 gold piece and not and then thinking it's worth $20. That's the other problem. So we've messed up our memory on all this, and we don't know how to really work this out. but we talk in jobs, and we talk in the expectation of jobs, and we continue to disregard the constitutional establishment to our detriment. That some of you can understand what this problem is, get this link that I'm going to put in the blogcaster in a couple hours, and read about it, start learning about the thing, and then go petition your state or to bring this into being, or get on board with those that have already done it if you have one of the 20 states that does this. But here's an answer for us, at least partly, and it'll buffer us in this time when they're going to steal more wealth by the increasing of this usury on the fiat. The use of the fiat is what causes the fees in the forms of usurious interests and things like these fees and other fees, and then the brokerage fee, whatever fees they want to throw on you. That can't happen when you go to a material, substantial money. They cover over deception. They cover over this thing. We tend to follow, like a ring in our nose, these things that, everything's happening really good. We don't realize they're getting ready to steal from our lives again, and they justify it this way, and no one calls it out. Or, more importantly, what I see, you don't reestablish. I don't mean recreate. I mean reestablish. It's there. Just reestablish your connection to the constitutional. Stop whining about the fact of the corporation. Stop whining about the fact of these statutes and codes and ordinances that you see. Start bringing it back to where it was in the original establishment. There's so many people, will point out that, the United States is a corporation, and they cite 28 U.S.C. 3002. Well, all fair and good, but go read it. Go read the section of law it's in. And my question then is, does that status exist in the United States relative to its patent, its land disposal authority? Is it still a corporation like you think? Is it still the same style of corporation talked about in 28 U.S.C. 3002? I think that's the section. Anyway, it says that government in the United States and its instrumentalities are a corporation. But it's in finances. The finances are this fiat stuff. So when that corporation's not dealing in the fiat, is it still the corporation underneath the same status? And I'm going to tell you it can't be. And so when you start realizing that there's all these things going on, like I've been discussing yesterday, like any state in their enabling acts, if you look very, very carefully, the one term for the name of the state, let's say the state of anywhere, the state of confusion in the enabling acts, there's 5 to 7 different meanings to that same term. Not a word, it's a term. In other words, the state of confusion may be defining just the very barest borderline. The imaginary borderline could be called the state of confusion. The area now, inside that border is the same state of confusion, but a different state of confusion. The land inside that border is the same state of confusion, but different than the other two. The people inside that border are the state of confusion, different than the other three. The government is different. It's the same name, but different than the people, the area, the land, the territory, and the borderline. These are all having the same name, and if you don't understand how they've done this, and you don't keep track of the context of these terms and how they're used, you've completely missed it. Now I hear people say, I don't want to put up with it. Well, that's what they've done to us. That's how they did it. And once you start to see it, it's easy to unravel what appeared to be a Gordian knot. You can untie the untieable. You don't get bound by those knots and the leashes they use them to tie you up with. So the deception here is they talk about one thing and they don't show you there's something else that might be better. You're wrapped up in this one world. They're wrapped up in that one world actually, and they get you to agree. They get you to not respond, to go back to where you were better positioned and had better protection. As we've been told, an ounce of gold bought a suit back in the 30s. a nice suit would be bought by an ounce of gold, a very nice suit, as a matter of fact, back in the 30s. And today, that ounce of gold will still buy a very nice suit. Now, you take the money that you had in FRNs back then and you tried to buy the suit today, give it up. You can't get a suit for $35, and that's at the 40% discount, the money the government stole from everybody. Interestingly, I don't know if most of you know, and no one says this, it seems, miners could not have their gold stolen at the time that the government took those gold from everybody else. Wonder why? Let me refresh your memory. I said it was property. I said it was private property, and that represents livelihood, work, and livelihood, effort. You're stealing a man's life, or a woman, if she's so inclined. So, again, it's understanding what they've done to us. I try to, I try to convey these things, and I get the idea, people agree with me for the most part, but we don't take that information and turn it to knowledge and say, okay, now I'm gonna apply it. I mean, how harmful would it be to write a letter to a local legislator and say, listen, I want you to be my representative for true, and I want you to do this. I want you to bring in that we can use coin. I want the state to coin money. I want it to be gold and silver. How about if we do that now? We need it right now. Now, I've been asking for y'all to do this, any of you that could, for years. Don't hear anybody sending me an email that they're working on it or that they got it through, but there's 20 states that started before you. I don't know why it's not on one of my listeners' lists of things they've got accomplished, but someone's out there doing it, and you can tie into that. You can actually research what they're doing. You can look at their arguments. You can find the failures in their arguments to make sure you don't do those, but advance the better position. We're not helpless in this. We are help when we put ourselves into victimhood and be helpless is what's our problem. And so information, starting of the information, the awareness of something is very important, and then we have to have the accuracy of this, and without certain disclosures, as I say, be careful of transparency, that they're trying to get you to look right through it like you look through a window and see something, you miss the window, looking at the object. You don't see the window as some obstruction, or that can be an obstruction or an occlusion or a barrier. You don't realize that. That we have to make sure we're not seeing through that. That I see more information coming out this week. The big deal here was, if you haven't heard, was this thing called Vault 7 that Wikileaks so-called unveils. Brings out a whole bunch of stuff. It confirms everything I've been telling you. It confirms way beyond Snowden. It confirms the fact that everything you have in electronics and digital is hackable. And again, you've got to be careful on. This is Wikileaks discussing it. Through a source that somehow came out through the NSA or CIA, whoever's doing this. Now there's all the discussions on the war that's inside. I'll get to that in a second. But as Wikileaks unveils what they call Vault 7, the largest ever publication of confidential CIA documents. They say here on this article, another Snowden emerges, and I have a hard time not saying snow job here. And I'll tell you what, folks, I continue. There's this thought that something's not right about all this and continuing, notwithstanding what we're being shown, and anything that, what was given, supposedly exposed to us, disclosed to us, was essentially the government of the United States has the ability to do everything that we've heard it can do, to get into your digital systems, to interfere with into your digital systems, to listen in on, even to your TVs, just like we've been reporting is in the news. I tell you that the news is your notice that this is going on. And all the big data companies, Microsoft, Cisco, they're all involved. Cisco even is a target for the NSA, CIA, in the documentation. This is like a very incestuous condition, and we're being given this, supposedly given this awareness. Now, I told you at the time that Snowden popped out, he wasn't telling us anything new. He was just confirming what someone in 2005, and I apologize for not knowing that gentleman's name, and then before that even, on and on and on. This has been known. This is not even new stuff. It's just confirmed. And they're telling you, as I've been saying, if your phones are rootable, they're hackable. And these guys are the premier hackers. So good are these things, just to let you know. To all this stuff you've been hearing about Russia done it, Putin's done everything. We now see from these documents, and I'm going to assume that enough people have looked at them they're legitimate enough, even though when I read them, some of it's a lot of nonsense. It's just all tech talk, and I'm not wired that way much anymore. I can pick stuff up, but it's, you got to really know the industry somehow. We're talking somewhat technical, so you're looking at someone's interpretation as well. But they can get into just about anything using anybody, anything, anyhow, make record of it. Maybe that's what that big building in Utah is all about. But this was more, my mind was saying, we're being exposed to all this. But it's like the feeling I got about Snow Job. He's just telling us stuff that we've already kind of known in a way. It's just confirmation. And what I said was that they do this. This is a technique. This is done to you so that you will see it and then have no more thought about it eventually. And I don't know if you've noticed, but over time, there's a few of us keep talking about how infiltrated we are, how susceptible we are. And a lot of people just throw their hands up and say, I got nothing to hide, screw them. Well, I was SCROOEM. So, for the sensitive ears. This could get you, I think, this whole thing. I'm not so sure about this. It is an exposure. It's a confirmation. But this is to get the prairie dogs to get used to the shadow of the eagle flying overhead, so they stay out on the mound longer and eventually get picked off. This is a desensitization type thing. You're now looking around. Your mind says you're pretty well helpless to it. In fact, I told you before, it doesn't matter if you have encryption, if they have a keylogger, or if they have an attachment to your video or your audio. It doesn't matter that you encrypt. They have it at the source, and this is what they're proving out they can do. So they put out this thing that confirms all of our greatest fears about this digital world, and they do that in part to put you back to sleep on it. And I'm going to say again, we need to start, this real specie, real money, weight measure, silver and gold takes us out of that. It's one less tangibility of corruption. What I've been suggesting we need to do is becoming more and more apparent if you haven't seen it before. We really have to wean ourselves on certain things. I know I'm talking to more people privately now. I don't really say some things, not that we have anything to hide. As I'm finding out, I don't want the adversary to know. Surprise is a big deal in a lot of things. In fact, I was just having a discussion just minutes before the broadcast. We found out some information on organization. I don't know if I want to let out what we're finding out, because I don't want to give them the ability to become parent to everybody to it. I want to expose it. So we have to hold it back. We got to hold our tongue, if you will. And so there's, again, big deal. It's serious. I'm not going to downplay it. Again, it confirms everything. You can get all the documents. You can go through them yourself. I see lots of people doing it. I'm finding some interesting silences. I don't see a direct communication about things like Tor, Hunix, Tails, VPNs. I haven't seen anybody bring out information on those things, which I find very interesting. Why not? Unless those are, again, if you remember, those are the government people and government paid for private parties made those as well. And I'm just wondering if the silence isn't the admission of there's no question about how they can hack all that as well. The point is that your life is controlled. That when you find out that they can go to Russia, they can put in their markers. The United States government can put markers in with their infiltration that says that someone else did it, like Russia done it. Russia hacked DNC. Russia did this. Russia hacked the election. Putin did everything. Putin does it even when he sees he shouldn't do it, he does it. So we see the fact that they can put markers, opening the whole thing up now. You can't tell who done it, actually. We can just throw it out on the NSA. Now, that's their shame. CIA, the United States government generally. That we now see that there's really no way to prove anything, and we're going to get back to something I warned you on. Notwithstanding whatever you think, how innocent you are, and this becomes a problem. Even the journalists now have serious problems, any of us that speak out, that I told you before, and I referenced that when the government has the ability to indict a ham sandwich and get a conviction, then they can fabricate any amount of evidence they need to get that conviction. We are now getting evidence that they have the power to put you anywhere, place you anywhere, say anything they want to do. I told you the Israelis you told us years ago, they have the ability to recreate DNA. They can put you at the scene of a fabricated crime. They can have you doing whatever they want done, and there would be no way for you, well, maybe if you have a real technical, savvy IT guy or some forensics, digital forensics expert, if you want to rely on the experts say, to protect you. You're now being witness to the fact that this government for the United States that went extrajudicial, and I can't stress this enough, they went extrajudicial on the pretext. What I now have seen, I didn't now see, I've been calling it out, is a war of terror under the pretext of the war on terror. They can put anything, anyhow, any digital construction they want on anyone. They can affect you go into this digital world, you plug yourself in, Silent Weapons, Quiet Wars, they plug you in, and they will have their way with you if they want to. Unchecked. Is what I've been asking you. It's going to take a bigger will, stronger will than just wanting to write a letter here. But we're going to have to figure out a cohesive way of standing up against this problem. And when you have the opportunity, if you ever get into it, most of you all won't, they don't want to rattle the hive, folks. They don't want to, you're a bunch of hornets if they know this, if you get going. They're not going to rattle the hive, so don't expect it. But we're going to have to figure out, notwithstanding that, to make our discussion, and I've been offering to you that you counter with a pretext of the war of terror, war on terror being the actual war of terror, to allow this, what I see, as an absolute breach of trust. In other words, I said it before, when these people allowed us to believe there was Battlefield America, and they declared it. They declared a war that's not actually been allowed by Congress, first of all. Secondly, they had breached their duty to protect us from the very thing that they were duty-bound to do so. So we have another trust breach. That you start piling these things on, one after the other, to show in your evidence that what they're doing is, well, they're criminals. I don't know what to say. These people are evil. That if we don't get a handle on this, you and I may be not around, but the ones coming along are going to be so blindsided and not really have an awareness on how to address things. And I say that from the observation that I am, myself, and with others, are working with stopping what this is in different places in other areas, and getting, by that application, getting the experience that we need that we can tell other people more specifically what to do and how to go about it, who to get informed, if they will, if they not, how to move around them. And you don't know that until you get in the battlefield, even by starting the writing of a letter, even if it's just to say, Representative, I want you to advance a bill that brings money, the coined money in the state, and I want to have lawful money. I want to have a gold and silver coin, and I want to have it separate from the federal currency. That's as simple as probably you could start if you didn't even want to do anything more than that. So these Vault 7 CIA, and this is just the starting, folks. It's supposed to be more and more dumps coming out about what we're giving. I don't know whether this is a legitimate actual dump of knowledge or awareness to notice to us, or if it's really a setup. And my thoughts keep turning to the setup, and I think I do that just out of a sense of self-protection, if you will. I don't want to be surprised by thinking that they're doing it. They're also altruistic. I have a problem with all these people that are always involved, folks. I don't know if you've noticed it. The same names are involved over and over and over again. New leak confirms CIA posed as Russian hackers was the other thing we need to see. As I said before, I'm going to repeat it by an article. that digital fingerprints can be manufactured within the documents that make it look like someone or something did something. Now, let me point out that there's some other. I didn't get this link, but it's a report going out that there's I guess if we look at Wikileaks, their Twitter feed said something about it, is that the documentation shows an obsession for making sure that their markers were cleared from whatever they did. And so this also indicates that they were doing it, otherwise why would you clear them? So digital fingerprints can be fabricated. And when this is what gets to me, the bother for me is I could care less at some level that once you see the government being a snake, it doesn't matter who they try to bite. You just realize it's a snake. And that's our problem. We have to figure out another thing on that our resolve won't be about how they keep making a mistake. It's that they exist and that they exist to harm people, and they don't have the right to do that. And my mind says that is irrespective of any declaration it makes regarding national security. In fact, they've allowed the vulnerability. They've now allowed and now they're proving it again. So even whether this is a game plan or not, we can use this to formulate our thoughts and our response. And, I haven't thought about where all this can happen, but there's a couple places that we can bring this out. And, sometimes it comes up in pretty interesting places, and you're going to find, if you look closely, you find that, the purposes for the way the government works anymore always seems to tag a lot of these national security things. You see the word security, modernization, and security, and they tie it together, and I think that's going to be one of the, they use it as a strength. I think we can use it against them. But you have to be integrated enough to see it and be aware that it can be used, and then use it. It doesn't hurt you to offer the insight, and then watch how that works, and then continue to offer other insights. And it may take a long time, because who you're more likely dealing with, you'll know the honest ones right up front. Those are not the hard people to see. The harder ones to see are the ones that make it look like they're honest and they're actually not. What we might call the actual politician says what they need to say to get past your defenses, and makes they look like a hero in your eyes, and that's all they needed to do. They just had to persuade you. And some people are pretty powerful. They can persuade lots and lots. So connected to this awareness, some smart lady decided, because of the Internet of Things is all hackable, all knowing, it's the all-seeing eye. The walls literally have eyes now, and they have ears, and so do your appliances. This is a fact. That the woman got a video, you can find it, or you can get it on the Blogcaster. The woman asks this Internet of Things device called Alexa from Amazon, asks the device 3 questions, and apparently this thing responds to her. Kind of creepy in my mind, but people do this. On the 3rd question, and pretty interesting how she goes through this. It's only a few seconds long, 40 seconds, she goes through this. Every time she asks a question, this device answers. It answers the questions. And she's asking about relative to the CIA. And then she asks, she sets up the question from the device, and she asks if the device would lie to her. And then she asks if the device knows what the CIA is, and she gets her first two answers. And then the 3rd question, she asks the device, are you connected to the CIA? And I would say maybe the punchline I'll leave out maybe. You need to watch how this thing works and what this thing does. And, silence or speaking or response or hesitations are readable, apparently. So you can make your own determination on what the response of that device is when asked if it was connected to the CIA. And I want to remind you that I told you before I recognized that there was something behind all this when I told you cannot go to an HTML page, or at least you couldn't, and you can't put the word private document in the upper header. They won't allow you to make them private documents. And this tells you that there's somebody behind the scenes already programming for that occurrence. Somebody thought that someone else would try to do that, to make a subroutine, to make that problem change and fix it. And over time, I told you, they didn't. It wouldn't validate the page. And then, for a long time, it wouldn't know how to do it. It wouldn't know how to validate it. Then it just all of a sudden started moving the line I put in down belonging to the meta tags, and it recreated the line that it needed. So someone had to be watching that there was a problem and fix the computer's response to my inputs in order for the computer to do that, because computers are not intelligent. There is no such thing right now as artificial intelligence. It's line code instruction, or what we call pattern recognition by line code instruction. And so there has to be a mind behind this thing, a man's mind behind this to fix these things. That gave me the input that they really are ahead of us on all this. That it's interesting to see the response of the device as the lady asks, are you connected to the CIA, the Internet of Things? So, you make of it as you will. I'm asking us to understand what these vulnerabilities might be, and we need to start responding and quicker and better, and if we can. We still have to function, and so we're going to have some disabilities here and there, but more to the point, on our communications, maybe not so much. But are you going to give your life over to your health records, your finances, your debt, your livelihood, your job? You call your job your slave job. Literally, master-servant relationship is employment, folks. Are you going to become subject to this encroachment? Are you going to volunteer yourself into this? You all think that you're not living in a voluntary society. I'm telling you, you are. And you may argue with me. You maybe want to go, oh, where's my consent? You're giving it to them. You're giving it to them in ways you don't understand. And until you figure that out, you won't understand what I'm talking about. And I don't have the time really to talk to you because you have to see this stuff yourself. People don't listen to me. And that's a problem. I'm not here just to hear myself talk or have you hear myself talk. I'm here to instruct you on things that are there. That things that are voluntary us in. And it is a crime that they do that. But that's still the crime against you that you have to arrest. And there's ways to do it. One of the things was the tools last week. The gentleman put a credit freeze, a debt freeze on himself and couldn't any longer use that debt system. That's pretty simple. Why is it such a big deal? And so as this digital life is we're being cut open wide here and exposed to all manner of exploitation. And those of you that are party affiliated think that, you're going to make America great again through the Republican Party, and don't forget the president of any party is the premier promoter of the party in the office, no less. If you didn't understand how connected all that is. Here we have another thing that opens us up. I don't know what gets in these people's minds to do this, so it's not really, it's just the evil spirit is all I can tell, because anybody with a thinking brain wouldn't do these kinds of things. And the reasons they use are about why they do this are really lame as well, and we all accept it apparently. At least enough not to make a big noise about it, at least in the minimum. Senate Republicans introduced resolution ensuring ISPs don't need your permission to sell your private data and social security number. Now, what you all folks are putting out on the internet, I don't know why, but this is your voluntarism at work. And so they're going to make it so that you don't even have to be told anymore if someone even hacks that information. This is the bright idea that's being promoted by the Republicans to become law. You get the link. I don't want to really talk about it. It's just ridiculous what's available to us to go rail against. You say, oh, well, it doesn't mean anything. Well, I think it doesn't mean anything because we're all not doing anything. Obviously, something's going on when we're not around. How about if we make ourselves around? Not around to it, just roll around and be played tiddlywinks with. No, be around to do something, to be interference for this nonsense. So they want to strip you of any protection. And why? Because your SSN is a tax number. It's public. It's your tax ID number. You're a business there. You're a commerce entity. They don't care how the money gets made or stolen, as long as it's moving. That's the whole thing about fiat currency. It has to move. It can't settle. That's the problem with it. If it settles, then that's what they have the problems with it. They've always managed the volume of the money that's moving. That's not a problem when you have weight and measure. That's just your what you use. And so we're being hacked left and right. We're going to have no remedy within this digital realm, which is virtual and fiction as well. See, I don't understand some of the folks here. We all embrace all this digital stuff, and then on the one hand you complain about fiction and government, and yet you engage yourself with a digital fiction. I really don't understand that. I literally start to get confused a bit about where do I place my thought about it to even begin to start the conversation if I was going to have one. And then we'll excuse it away in all kinds of ways. We'll excuse how we are not congruous with our own self. Now, at some point I don't have a problem with digital, but this is the world that they have. The future they want is one where you are controlled and you are controllable, and if you are not controllable, they will make something up about you and get you controlled. And I want us to be aware of that. I mean, at some point, I tell you folks, I was thinking about the other day when I was at war with the ant invasion. My thoughts are just kind of running through my mind now because I got nothing else better to do but to be the soldier against the ant horde. But it came to my mind, I'm thinking about you all as listeners and what I bring, and it just came to my mind, I really am condemning people. I'm condemning you to the responsibility, and if you don't step up, it's not really my problem, but it is a problem. And I have a suspicion that I think everyone knows that inside. And as I say that, for all the prodcast and pastcasts, so late in the broadcast now, an hour on, it's BTW RLM 205. I may have to add this into the front end, I don't know, but BTW RLM 205. And as I say that, thank you. Vince had a goal this week to advance more listeners to the cause here, and he started doing lots of Twitters, and he started doing whatever promotions he has done, and on his effort alone that I can tell, the YouTube RLM YouTube account has over 200 listeners. That's quite a jump, way more than the 100 he wanted. It's way more and above what we usually get, by double even. And the Spreaker account, which Grammy Mary helps to or donates to keep going, it now has over 200, which on the scheme of things and other broadcast networks is really nothing. But for this network and behind which of the little bitty connections that we have is quite a jump. It doesn't match my Oracle numbers, but it is a big jump, and I'm just hoping that there's going to be follow through with you all. And those of you that were also sending out the link to the podcast, the blogcaster or the podcast, the prodcast or pastcast, or links to wherever you found that would get someone to those, I thank you very much, because I don't know who you are. I do know Vince took on the task and told me he was going to do so, and I'd certainly encourage that. More people were able to hear last week's broadcast in 1 week than I've ever had on RLM at all, ever. And so now that I say that, thank you for those that donate to RLM to keep its servers running. And I'm getting to that part to say that apparently we need a Freedom's Network, a social network, needs some donations. Bo Diddy, out of his own initiative, paid for the servers of over $300, which he would like. I'm sure he would like to be compensated a bit for. I would ask you, I don't know if that's the proper way to say what he would. I'm not paraphrasing his statement. It just came out of me that if you're using that service, if you can, if you could donate something, it only takes maybe $10 from 30 people, and you got that covered for him. He just came out of his pocket to do so, and he's not able, like anybody. It's a big shock to have that kind of drainage. So, if you could help him out to help you, and understand that with that comes all of Grimner's work to keep that site running. And at some point in the future, I hope it turns out to be a good tool to use to get people in action against these things that we see that I speak about. Right now, it's still more of a social, information, just sending information around. But all these things are there to do, and you have tools to use. So, notwithstanding all of these things and looking at how the digital world is, it is a convenience and it is a big tool, and notwithstanding its oppression, or what we are told is an oppression, and whether or not there's this deep state faction now fighting one with the other, we can sit in the chaos of it and work through it, and this is our time, folks. I guess we've been preparing for today is all I can say. This is it. This is whatever this happens on the WikiLeaks thing. You're being told of the parameters of the government. You're now seeing what you're left with, and I quickly came to the conclusion that one of the alternatives, like money, gold and silver coin that your state can actually coin and make real again, and actually something that's a hedge against encroachment. The thing after looking at the WikiLeaks public service announcement is that if you're not using, and I hear Grammy Mary uses this periodically, and I've had to resort to it myself, but if you're not using 2 cans and some string, you're probably being recorded. And that's not only my sentiment, that's now popping up as a meme everywhere. So if you're not using 2 cans and a string to communicate, you're probably being recorded. And that's our notice that this is how terrible this thing is coming down. And the main problem I'm seeing is not that you're an innocent, is that you can be made guilty. And these people are psychopaths. Their agenda is all that matters to them, and you become the roadkill of on their way to their destination. If you're not aware enough to get out the way, you become some carry-on's meal. So some bird is meal. So there is a discussion about what this WikiLeaks thing is, and I'm not sure what I guess I just want to bring this, that there are people looking at this and thinking about it. Here's one man's opinion. The conflict within the deep state just broke into open warfare. Well, the title, it broke into open warfare during the campaign, I believe. But notwithstanding that, and when you make that demarcation, this is an observation that there's at least 2 forces at play. And this expose is countering the one that wanted us to go to war their way, and countering with the objective that they had, which to blame Putin, was to show us that actually the United States government is doing it. The United States government is doing everything. Now, I want to remind you, I just said that there's a state of confusion, and the border is different than the area of the land and the territory, different than the territory, different than the people, different than the government itself, which all have the same name. That we have these constructions to look at when we are analyzing what's going on. That the government that's doing this is not the people, even though you may respond to both the people being of the United States of America and the government being the United States of America. Technically, it's only the United States, not actually America. It's the district. But you keep track of these things, that there's a power structure called the United States of whatever status, whatever actual meaning, that is promoting itself as legitimate, that is completely illegitimate. And it's doing it in the name of the people, which it really can't. But it does, and it's going to get away with it because most people don't understand these distinctions. That there's an open war now internal to the government, which should make a treason. It's going to be fantastic breads and circuses for all of us at some level. And we're kind of sitting on the outsides of this, aren't we? That really ought never have happened. And what I think this, again, I think this is a tool to get us down the path to make us lose our memory just that much more. If you bring back money, a real specie, state-coined money, you're going to start to bring back the memory that we should be holding very strongly to, so that we don't get lost in what's going on and what the explanations might be on who is trying to wrest power. Because ultimately I'm seeing that nobody, either power, is not saying we're not going to continue our warmongering state as a government, which is not the people, but it functions underneath the name of the people. That this deep state is still allowing the lie of the war of terror. In other words, I haven't yet seen in all of these dumpings the exposure that they're utilizing the war on terror for their war of terror. And this should have been right up front, no different than I don't see them talking about Tor and other things. They're not talking about other avenues. They're explaining how all your virus protectors are useless. They're explaining a whole lot, but they're not explaining certain things. There's silences that I'm noticing that are a question. They're just an open question. They're certainly not an answer, and it's certainly all of conjecture. That they use these things to get us to the point, again, what's that problem action solution? This is what I think is going on here. We have to step back away and look and see where they're trying to take it. And you're going to start seeing lots of statements being made to attempt to bring us into the, if you will, the modernization of things. The way they're doing this is, again, a behavioral control system, as we talked the last 2 weeks as well, to get you more susceptible to the imposition. You don't hear anybody in either deep state side going and railing against or producing evidence against the war, the battlefield America condition. They're just wrestling over who's going to control that battle. And some people apparently believe Trump can do that better than others. That moving on to how they are adjusting, while you're all focused on that, we talked about yesterday the TSA was going to do even more private investigations of your body. They're not explaining what it is, but came the following week, no one's talking about this. Well, this is all happening now. No one's talking about this, that the TSA warned the police about the new airport pat-downs, and the takeaway is they told the police, you're going to be getting more complaints, expect them, because they didn't tell them what they're going to do, because we're going to intensify our scrutiny of their junk. And so, again, this is a notice to us that the police are being warned. The police become a part and parcel, aiding and abetting this pretext thing. And so what do we do? Well, as I told you, a guy on the internet, and I had his link on last week. I didn't even recognize that. His name is Corbett. It's not James. It's Jonathan. And he's got a website called Professional Troublemakers, and he's all over this TSA thing. He has the other article that we talked about last week about the DHS quietly testing mandatory facial recognition of passengers exiting the U.S. I have a link for that page. You can see it. He's integrated with this, but his another prior post he had was, what are my rights at the TSA checkpoints? So all that plan or don't plan, or maybe may find yourself, either interested in this encroachment against your right to travel unmolested and other things, or you may find that you want to square your record away before you are forced because of an exigence, some family thing you want to get somewhere quick. That you may want to have your record squared away. That'll take a little bit of time, as they're going to be as evasive as possible. But he goes through, what are your rights at the checkpoint? I'm asking you to get this link. Those of you that are interested, reduce it down to bullet points that you can use in a request, either for an administrative hearing or have some response answers made, so that you can get to the bottom of this for yourself. Not everybody will be interested. A couple of you might be. This is where you jump in. There's going to be probably no threat to you. If you don't intend on using it anyway, that's the best ones to get involved. You'll never be jeopardized by this, but you can always pretend that you would be, because you do have the right. In other words, as I've told you, those of you that find yourself with a license and insurance and all that really are better positioned to challenge the jurisdiction that's wrongly deceiving you on your use of the roads than the one who doesn't. So there's again, these permissions are limited liability. And so if you can use this permission of administrative addressment, Jonathan Corbett has a guidance, and I think if you get involved with him, I think he's willing to put up some money for attorneys. And I know the problem there, but notwithstanding that, this guy is motivated. Those of you that want to do the right to travel stuff and the impositions, and he's got the standards on his website. So professionaltroublemaker.com. I think that's even kind of fun idea. So we have that for us. That's one guy out there putting himself out that's addressing this. He's actually got a lawsuit against moving a lawsuit over on his part where him and a friend got abused, literally abused by walking into a concert by a private party trying to pull the same TSA stuff. So you see if you don't stop it, folks, it gets worse and worse. The ripple effect goes out and out. Now, I don't know what people are doing at these parties and bars and things. I don't know. A long time ago, I realized that was a dead end too. That's more of the problem. But those of you that are going out should anticipate notice to him was notice to you, and he's going to go and sue them. You may want to keep tabs on how he does that, how he fares, where he makes his mistakes, if he makes any mistakes. If he's a success, you can translate that to other places. If some of you don't step up on that point, it's going to get worse. It ends up being everywhere. Wait till you walk into Walmart. Now, this lie and who becomes the invader is very important to identify. When you find out it's you, and I mean your government through you, your government is going to be denied by everyone who listens to me, but it's in fact the fact of the imposition is already there. Too bad. You volunteered into it because you haven't left. Now, to get out, you're going to be all ID'd and felt up. And then when you leave, they're going to track you because when you leave the country, they're going to want 30% of what you make elsewhere because you didn't figure out how to stop the status that you're a taxpayer. You're in a plantation. You're a slave. You're always there until you figure out what it starts to take to make the record that they're not, and then you're going to run into the proposition that who's doing it to you is a criminal. How do you arrest the gang is going to be your next problem. But you have to come to the first step first. So identifying the gang and identifying the invasion has become the straight-talking, all-important thing to start to do. And I find that in this guy Assad in Syria. He's outing this bully and brute and criminal in the world called the United States government that will do nothing but cause a mess everywhere and lie about it and make it look like you done it. If embarrassment would reach high enough, I would use it. But I can't in this case. This is beyond, way beyond embarrassment. And Assad calls it out. United States military forces in Syria are invaders. See, I told you what's happening in Syria has already happened to you in the United States of America. You just don't know it. You just aren't seeing it because there's not buildings blown up around you. I see the blown up buildings. I see the dead people in the streets. I see the walking wounded. I see the carnage. And people think I'm kind of nuts. Oh, you agree with me, but we can't go so far as to actually do something about it. I make good sense, but I've got too many other things to do. I'm not going to even take 15 minutes out even to think about something. And I'm going to take 5 days a week, 50 or 7 days a week, even if I want to be more dedicated, 15 minutes a day to strictly look at something, even if it's a blank piece of paper with the words think. And you do that for 15 minutes on the subject of the thing you want to make right. Well, you may have to come to take a week worth of time of 15 minutes a day to figure out what that is. So those that want to make excuses they can't devote 15 minutes, I'm disappointed because we need all of us in there now, wherever that is. I don't even care where it is. Just throw ourselves at it. So Bashar al-Assad tells us what a straight talking, straight shooter is if we needed to get the example. I don't know about the guy, but he sure, I have a hard time finding out he's the criminal in all this. Now, whatever their politics is in Syria, he says the United States is an invader. And here's a phrase that I wanted you to take away is what he says, exactly out of his mouth. Any foreign troops coming to Syria without our invitation or consultation or permission, they are invaders, whether they are American, Turkish, or any other one. He goes on to say, and we don't think this is going to help. In other words, what the United States is doing, interjecting itself in Manjib. Interjecting itself at all is where he starts to go with this. We don't think that is going to help, that they interject themselves now. Now, what are they going to do to fight is? I'm sure he says ISIS. I say is. Remember, is us. Is U.S. The Americans, he goes on to say, lost nearly every war. They lost in Iraq. They had to withdraw at the end, even in Somalia, let alone Vietnam, in the past in Afghanistan, your neighboring country. He's talking to a Chinese reporter. They didn't succeed anywhere they sent troops. They only create a mess. They are very good in creating problems and destroying, but they are very bad in finding solutions. Now, I hope you caught one of the problems. He's responding on how it affects him. He's telling us the truth. What he doesn't understand is that's what the United States does. They won in Vietnam because they created a mess. That's what their whole plan was. They create chaos. You divide up people. They won in Afghanistan because they're continually creating chaos. Those people aren't together. They're not unified. What Assad doesn't understand is that the very fact of the existence of the United States in his country is succeeding against him. The bottom line is I want to refer you back to what I talked about last week, and it just shocks me a bit. What did the fallen soldiers then fall for? If it is only to make a mess in the world, to violate people, to allow them to be killed, to agree to and on a pretext for something that doesn't exist, that is turned around on everybody they're fighting for in the United States itself to go after the people themselves. Now we see the United States being the government as different than the United States we know as the people. Same name, different thing. What did those people, those soldiers, fall for? Well, when you fall for something, you've been duped, ain't it? And this is what we're going on to, and this is what reflects over and over. This is what the Vault 7 starts to expose to us, that the government is there, it's prevalent, it's all-seeing eye is on the walls, in your instruments, everywhere. And I don't think I want to buy two cans and some string now, because they'll probably have something in them that will actually transmit your communication there. So be careful. You better use a vintage legacy cans and string. And he talks about this invader. I'm saying you have an invader. You have lots of invaders in this country called the United States of America. We can't be great again until we destroy all that. I see nobody in the government working to do that. I see them fighting for the controls of that invasion. United States makes a mess. United States blames Putin. They have all the proof to prove that Putin done it. And yet you look at the facts, and Moscow just saved Turkey and the U.S. and the Kurds from duking it out in Syria. The only one that's actually trying to keep the peace, if you will, and I understand they have their own geopolitical reasons. We're talking about why are we over there making a mess. Moscow appears to be the only one that can keep it from just underneath the point of actually going to everybody opening up arms there against each other. I have a link for that. You can just, again, it's over this Manbij invasion. Turkey's attacking Syria. Moscow has to step in and say, listen, we're actually here to stop this thing that the United States started called is. We need to extricate them out of this area before we move on. We have to clean up the mess that the United States has created. As soldiers, what did you fall for if you now identify the whole thing over there as a big mess that was fostered and encouraged and part of the plan to fail in the United States? What kind of fodder are you? And the people that support it, who are you? You now have again, you're going to be scrutinized in your travel. The United States does not intend you to travel around free. No, they'll bomb you and then they'll block you out or they'll penalize you some more. People don't understand this is what's been coming on them. I've been talking about it over time. We call it I refer it to the Hegelian dialectic. They create, again, it's just this alternative dispute resolution. They create a dispute, some fraudulent reason why you need to have their help. And you don't realize by the very insistence upon that, they've just violated you in the get-go, and you never identified that. You didn't call them out for the criminal they were to begin with, so they get a little bit more from you. And this getting a little bit turns into these big wars, these big scenarios where the United States try to wash its hands of how it's not hurting anybody. Oh, it's over there for helping everybody. It's the same war that they're pitting against the people in America. And at some point, I see no difference. The method's slightly different. They have to keep your mind in certain places so they can keep you looking in the wrong direction. And most importantly, inactive. Making your own excuses because it's just so complicated. That there is things that we do back to what is travel, that we have. That the TSA gets all over you. I mentioned Jonathan Corbett. He's hot on this. You might want to team up with him if you're interested. A lot of people aren't. I'm thinking you need to just in case. Not in case. You need to just because no one else is. And another thing is if you just want to fix a problem and you're not a part of it, you're probably going to be better at it. You're not going to, this is where I get people, women who are having their so-called children stolen from them. When they're involved, they're about useless to themselves. It's a lot. I don't even know if I ever do it. It's a lot of work just to get them to try and separate what they have to do versus how they're being run down by it. So it's sometimes better to not be a part of the accident in order to get things done. You become the EMT to the problem you find, to the accident you ran upon. That you can take action from that standpoint. Or, as I was saying before, anticipate you may be going in and think through how you're going to engage these usurpers, these invaders in our land. The ones that obstruct you from free travel, from free livelihoods, from just doing what you need to do when you haven't hurt anybody, that become a motive, power, and force to interfere all the time instead of sitting in reception of the problems that may be given to it. TSA, you're trying to get out, let's say you want to get out and go travel, they want to do all this stuff to you. And so you have to make some choices because you haven't worked before the fact. You find yourself going to be in a line. Why don't you try considering this? And look where it got him. Not sure if he knew this was going to be a win this way, but here's one less cricket. Someone looking ahead and anticipating the future and being ready to engage it. Man with Fourth Amendment written on chest wins trial over airport arrest. Now, I'm asking you to try and avoid all this. Here's someone who did it a little different. Literally put his body on the line and works it out to where he has a victory against the type of action that's been taken against him by the TSA. A Virginia man who wrote an abbreviated version of the Fourth Amendment on his body and stripped to his shorts at an all-airport security screening area won a trial Friday in his lawsuit seeking $250,000 in damages for being detained on a disorderly conduct charge. I'm not going to repeat any more. They actually have a link to the lawsuit. You can see how to do it. You can see what he did. You can see what they did. Don't understand that they'll probably not treat you like this again. He's the first in and probably first through, and that's how they get their hands slapped. They do adjust things, but there's going to be more that you can look at and do. You don't have to be helpless. So here's a gentleman who's actually succeeded in doing what I was telling you we're going to have to step up and start to do. And this is just to stop the affront. He was still having to, disrobe partly in order to do what he did. Now, you have to look very carefully. There was a problem that they created for themselves in handling him. but it made the statement he was not going to volunteer further and more, and they didn't have the right to go farther. And then they didn't really have the reason. He didn't go to the extent I would go to call the whole thing a big pretext fraud anyway, but he doesn't take that, apparently. And that's fine. But I'm saying be ready to go to the next level, because once you make it through on the first lawsuit, you're probably not going to get a following lawsuit. There's very few following lawsuits that do that, if they're of any consequence. Another victory in a different front. We're talking about they defame you and your character. They defame about what you do. They can create records now. Is the problem I'm seeing on this. They can create records that you almost forensically cannot separate, that show the harm. But until that day, we still have things we can do, and we necessarily must do them. And I think we're unprepared to do these things, and why I talk all the time about at least get your mind into starting to get prepared, and then hopefully get prepared in certain areas. That hospital CEO wins major court victory after accusing CNN of false reporting. So there's a way to get at the news for its false reporting. You just don't write a letter and say stop false reporting. You have to be the victim of it, and then I'm saying you have to be ready to confront it. And some of us are not capable in monetary means, but that just sometimes means we have to put more energy into researching and maybe finding people that might be like I said, Jonathan Corbett says on his website that if you get involved in a certain type of issue, he'd be willing to spring for the attorney. My opinion of that, my opinion of the knob of an attorney notwithstanding. It might be the only way you can go in and do that. I don't know. I would say at that point, probably most likely. But you're going to have a record that they can rely on. That's actually that they can't impugn. And that's easy enough to make. This story here, those that accuse CNN and other mainstream media outlets of fake news will probably revel in a recent decision by the federal judge in Atlanta, Georgia. While George Orinda Evans didn't all out declare the CNN was peddling in falsehoods, she did take aim at the network in an initial judgment in favor of the former hospital CEO who sued CNN, accusing them of purposely skewing statistics to reflect poorly on the West Palm Beach hospital. Judge Evans didn't mince words in her 18-page order, allowing the case to move forward and dismissing CNN's attempt to get it thrown out of the court. You can read more. This is just on statistics. Can you think about what could happen if someone went up against this climate change, which the definition is based on a relation to statistics, and showing that the theory that they're on alone is false, let alone what they might turn up. They can't turn up anything. So where are we stopping it more than complaining or just laughing at it? That's the other thing. They want us just to laugh at this stuff as well while they still perpetrate the crime against everybody. Where is our response to this administrative stuff? This is the things I've been trying to suggest. It's not the answer, it's part of an answer. It allows us to get into the fight without jeopardy. The last one I just had, someone looked and said, wait a minute, you can't defame my hospital by using statistics like that. How much different would it be to go ahead and you can't defame me and call me an enemy combatant and presume upon me I'm going to bomb an airplane when you don't have probable cause? Where'd you get that right? But under the pretext of a lie. A lie we can see now goes out in the world and does nothing but causing a mess, and that opinion comes from the highest officer in other countries. I've just laid out for you how you lay out some facts to prove a point. You can do that right before an agency without having all the expense of going to court. As I've been asking all of you, and I still, I really just, part of me just dies. It just crushed. But dies. It gets crushed. All the supposed liberty-minded people. I don't hear one speak out about what they're doing or anything, what they've done about certain things, and in particular this marijuana or hemp, cannabis. And we have another point where it may take an association to do so. We're just trying to get fees for Bo Diddy for covering the website for you all to use. It may take that kind of a better organization, not the fees. It may take, you have to come together with the fees and the commitment in an organization of people to be able to sue the DEA, which happens now. For those of you interested in production now, I would say this is production. The Hemp Industries Association sues DEA for regulating hemp as a Schedule I drug. Why do we sit back when we have these questions? We have the logic. I hear it come out of everybody's mouth. I've told you this over and over again. I hear all your perfect answers against why they shouldn't be doing it. Why don't you just put that in a formal form of a complaint or an administrative record and prove the point and give yourself the standing to make it important instead of just yakking? The Hemp Industries Association has filed a motion against the DEA challenging the agency's handling of hemp foods as Schedule I drugs. I'll end there. You can get the link at the Blogcaster. You can read how they do this. Most of you won't. Most of you just want to talk and chat and whatever. Just make lots of noise and spend lots of time. I'm really wanting someone to step up because I want to feel good about what they did. I want to feel good for them. I mean, I know it benefited me to have it happen. Well, it benefited you. I mean, to me, I do the broadcast. I'd like more people to hear it. Vince stepping up saying, I'm going to commit to some time to advance and promote the broadcast. I'm setting a goal. That's it, folks. That's all you got to do. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to set a goal. And I'm going to put some time into doing that. And he did, and I'm just thrilled that he was able to do that, and I am a side beneficiary for that, absolutely. And the people that came to listen, given that they listened for more than just a click in or was a bot, we can't figure that out either. I can't anyway, not from what I see. Those that actually came and listened, we hope that they were given a little bit more. I certainly do. I don't come here again to talk. I'm trying to show you there's people out there doing stuff. There's ways to approach it. There's questions to ask. There's ways to put your opinion that you know is the truth in a form that actually gives it traction somewhere. I just sit here and I just think all the things I see coming through emails, all the time that's spent to move emails through and the chat, and you have these great statements to make, and you don't put them in the right place. You put them in the chat that it just disappears unless there's some bot collecting it all up. It's never going to go anywhere, and you had a great point. Why didn't you empower it? Why didn't you stop claiming all the time you don't have to do something and turn around in that moment and understand how to work a word processing program, learn how to go find an address, learn how to go respond, put the very same point in the context it needs to be, and send that thing out. And then be all over it. I hear so much wisdom in people that dies. It's really, I don't know what the emotion is about that. So here's it. A hemp association sues on the question of whether or not they can actually make hemp foods a Schedule I drug. And that's going to be I'd like to see how they're going to justify that. But we'll see. No one ever asked the question why. I don't know. I've been asking you all to create those questions now for years and years. And if I remember right, we got another year coming here behind Woodshed on RLM. We'll see here. I don't remember now the date. Coming up, I think, in a few more weeks. And thank you very much. So here's what happens when you don't engage these things and you voluntarism into what you deny you're doing, and for good reason. We all have our good reason, and I'm not saying that good reason's not sarcastically. I'm saying that's the one we have to use because it is the reason. But we agree, we voluntary ourselves in for reasons and things that are not proper, and we are going to then okay that by continuing. That we talked about this genetic testing, the genetic vaccine that can adjust your DNA. We see statements coming out now as almost an afterthought promotion showing that chemistry can do the same behavioral controls that we already knew. But I find that that's the DNA thing coming back up, that the vaccine can actually adjust your DNA, which is much more powerful and irreversible, is now being covered over by now the acknowledgments that these drugs, enzymes, or whatever can affect our behavior. That this DNA thing and the human hybrid issue and these other matters coming on board now, it becomes more sinister if you start to look. If it's not sinister enough what this next report's telling us, it's notice to us. Those of you that have to work for a living haven't figured out a way to not do that and do something else, or redefine what it is you're doing, not as an employment, but more as a contract, I would say. Contractors are treated differently. Look carefully. Don't just take my word for any of this. You have to research this down. You have an employment contract, but that's underneath a different type of servitude. That as you go through this, and as we hear Trump care coming on, it's Trump's scare. It's not going to change. In fact, I now hear that some people aren't going to get care under ludicrous reasons about why the Republicans have ludicrous reasons why women won't get the proper care they need. I don't understand it. Neither here nor there right now, because it doesn't matter. You put yourself into these relationships, and then you're dealt with, and you will not have a say except to involuntary yourself out of work or comply. And what you comply to is, I don't know, since everything's now hackable and treatable and reproducible elsewhere than where you are, I don't know how much you're going to be able to actually agree with this, except that you're going to put yourself in a diminished capacity and just give up the ghost on it and just hand it over. That it might soon be legal for employers to force you into a genetic test. It might soon be legal for employers to force you into a genetic test. What is the incentive? The incentive is to the master, your employer, to a 30% cash reduction in their premiums if you do get it. A genetic test. House GOP is pushing this forward. A genetic test. If your genes ain't quite right, you think you can get that job anyway? If you haven't been taking your vaccines and your genes aren't unzipped and rezipped so you behave correctly, you think you're going to get that job? You think they now have the right, your gene structure, that they have now third parties can take it and sell it? Everything the government does is going to be for a profit to whomever their partners will be. And you're going to volunteer yourself underneath the belief that you can only do that job in order to have it done, and if you don't, someone else will. And this is where they have everybody. This is the prison planet. This is the plantation. That you can be forced, under penalty of not having your job, to take the genetic test for what? The bottom line buck. The buck. Your whole life is reduced to a fiat currency, and you consider that when you consider it, if you consider it that way, you're valueless. And we all do it. Well, most of us. Some of us. Not me. Can't do it. Got nothing. And this is where they want us. But you know, like was it Janis Joplin? You're free when you got nothing else to lose. Yeah, that's kind of where they got us. And that's a hard decision. And so we only can wean ourselves off as much as we possibly can. However, it's coming to the point. You're watching technocracy step up. You're watching this DNA, again, this genetic information becoming more and more important. I want you then to jump over when you got the human hybrids and they need to take a genetic test, how they're going to decide who the culling might be in the future. And what you might be having for lunch as an employee as we bring on the acceptance of cannibalism. I'm telling you folks, these last few broadcasts for me have been super creepy. Super creepy. And yet it's like there's nothing science fiction anymore. I almost can't believe that. My mind is no longer creative enough to come up with something even more science sci-fi than what we're actually living today. A genetic test to keep your job. And they reduce it down to the buck. And insurance. So you can understand the power of insurance here. You missed that boat as well. Now this next thing is interesting disclosure, but I didn't like the way they say it. I can see the nuance behind this. I've not been so hot on the natural news for some of the misdiscussions that they make. They do it right here, but here's the point. I'm not worried about how they characterize kudos to its own self more than the fact of what it's been said and identified. The breaking: CDC confirms Natural News 100% correct on report of African green monkey kidney cells used in vaccines. Remember, those same vaccines that can be created to change your DNA real time. The same DNA that's going to be looked at in these genetic tests in the future to see if whether you're worried or worthy because you have been behaviorally modified. And you won't cost not just it won't cost you them as much when they know who you are. They'll be able to manage you pharmaceutically better. They'll be able to manage you more cost efficiently, and they'll be determining when to cut you out when you reach the end of use, as you become elderly. I said that number is at 46. The Natural News says that CDC confirms that Natural News is 100% is not actually a 100% statement. The CDC did not come out and say that Natural News was 100%. What happened was Natural News made the disclosure that these green monkey kidney cells were being used, and the CDC produced a document that showed in the list that, in fact, that the monkey cells is included in vaccines. It didn't say that Natural News was correct. And so this is a little deception. I don't want to take anything away from the fact of what we have to be concerned with, but this is the green monkey cells that was interjected and also had cancer with it, if I remember that correctly. And as I thought about that, I don't remember now. So read the story, find out what it is. They put these primate cells. Human hybrid selling has been going on for a long time, folks. And so now it's confirmed through CDC documentation, the excipients, I think they call them, in the vaccines, which are these green monkey cells. And now, as I was talking before, we're talking that these vaccines can be made to unzip your DNA and rezip them the way they want to, cause behavioral controls. They'll be looking for these markers, folks, this CRISPR stuff, this technology. They'll be looking for these markers in your DNA in the future, and then probably the near future, whether or not you've been modified, that the Trump scare system is going to be working with in order to make decisions on your health care, maybe even your life. We have a story here again talking about now the pharmaceutical control of your behavior. And I think I heard this, not sure if I heard this when I came in and listened to the Freakers Ball. I think maybe Grimner was talking about it. One of these things, or maybe another one. I've read now a couple of them. They're using these different chemicals to treat your behavior. Have scientists discovered a mind-control drug? It sounds straight out of a science fiction novel, but researchers might be able to use the chemicals dopamine to read your thoughts and even change them and affect your immediate actions. It's no different than I was talking before, but inferior to being able to change your genetics to do the same thing, but permanently. See, these medications don't do it permanently necessarily. I guess they could actually fry you if they use it, like LSD might be able to fry you. But what I found interesting with all this was the fact that this comes right after. They didn't lead with these stories. These stories come after, as if to kind of cover over the other idea of vaccines and DNA being able to be altered permanently. And then those are DNA markers, which genetic tests can check, which only chemical tests can check, but they wouldn't know the effect of upon the organism that they're now hybridizing. And so we have these connections going on through this week. Again, non-disclosure. The government makes war on everything for bottom dollar benefits. You're going to be subject to it unless you stop it, and you're going to have to make those hard decisions at some point. That's not for me to do. But, you really, if you're not prepared for it, it'll come a shot out of the dark, and you're going to be having to do certain things. You'll be whining and complaining about it, but you'll do it. And this is going to be so detrimental as this thing moves on more and more into the future that, again, we have to be careful on what the experts are giving to us. They are telling us that they have ways. If we didn't know it before, it's now confirmed that they have their ways to get us to behave correctly, and maybe simpler than 1984 in the Little Room 101, I think it was. next thing about the EPA and what these governments will or won't do. The impressive 2013 email by senior EPA toxicologist, quote, "It is essentially certain that glyphosate causes cancer." Again, government agencies giving license to the crime against you. The license is the ability to do the crime. People are on the point of identifying and disclosing these things. They get vilified, and to Natural News' credit, they did call it out. I don't like the way they state that now CDC actually spoke to Natural News, but Natural News wasn't the only one. The point is, but there was somebody that's created a website to try and call this stuff out. I guess that's the thing I see there. And now we see the fact, and whether it's been being denied or not denied, been evaded, was that there are certain things in these vaccines that if they were on a list in your product data sheet, you might be able to point out and say, no, I don't think I want that. I don't want to become this human-primate hybrid, this human-man-woman primate hybrid. I don't want to do that. And I don't want now to have that potentially affect my DNA. Here, I got a list going already on why your objections would be and why they're no good. If you want to take the cause up, take it substantially. Don't just go off and fly off the handle about all you think you know about it. Make the factual statements of what the thing is that's a problem. And put it somewhere. Don't talk it on the E like I'm doing. I'm just doing nothing right now. I'm talking, it's going to a file. That file sits there, becomes electrons. It means nothing until someone takes what I'm saying and applies it in their way. But we have the EPA toxicologist saying that glyphosate causes cancer. And they go through this interesting list of what this scale remover actually does. It's pretty interesting. We can read some of it. Chelators inhibit apoptosis, the process by which our bodies kill tumor cells. Chelators are endocrine disruptors involved in tumorigenesis. Glyphosate induces lymphocyte proliferation. I'm going to get it. Glyphosate induces free radical formation. Chelators inhibit free radical scavenging enzymes requiring zinc, magnesium, and copper from activating the SODs. So on and on. There's like a list of 15 things there. This is from a letter of someone who was in there, and this is in a court case that you also have a link for those of you that are interested in Roundup, glyphosate materials, and what they do, what the government will allow, and what they allow into and agree with in their health care as well to be future dealing with. The Monsanto cancer suit turns to turn EPA deputies' suspicious role. Again, these deputies inside the organization are there with their usually industry related, and they don't necessarily work for you for sure. And the bottom line of the financial side of the government, which is that corporation you find in 28 U.S.C. 3002, is the bottom line. So a former United Environmental Protection Agency official may not be able to escape testifying about his alleged role in helping Monsanto suppress inquiries into whether Roundup weed killer causes cancer. That letter that I was just reading from is one of the pieces of evidence from this toxicologist, and talking matter-of-factly about what this one guy, what shocked me was this guy, she said, do the right thing for once and don't base it on a reward to yourself. In other words, I read that as saying the guy's never done the right thing and he only does something that's based on reward to him, like bonuses. Is what's inside our government, inside these decision makers, inside this corruption against us, inside these people that influence the lawmakers that would do something such as agree that you have to take a genetic test. I mean, I'm not going to go through all the problems of that and all the things that brings up. I just brought up a few. But these are the kinds of incestuous relationships that we are now suffering because we allow them to continue. Suffering is continuing. The harm, not stopping it. That I'm asking us to step up wherever we can. I can't believe that there's not grandmothers out there with a little bit of time on their hands. They can't focus on some of this and make the Learn how to make the right communication to the right people and just start pounding on that wall till you break through, pounding on the door till you break it down. Make awareness. Do what some of these women I've seen. In fact, the women do really good this way, actually. Like you see, they make a big movement of things, and they do it in the right way, and they do it on the right point. Not just these opinions spewing a bunch of things, but find the substantial part of it, and they really kind of push this thing through and get it into a movement form where there's a lot of people, and that's when some of these changes. I don't like it, but that's what's going on. I don't like that we have to put so much energy, but we have a bunch of invaders in our country all looking to take their profit. They end up all being stakeholders, as far as I can tell. They're all part of that public-private partnership. They've figured us out, folks. They've figured out how to use the system for themselves. And so, until we figure out a way to start utilizing the tools that were in the objective basis, what I would consider the constitutional side, and eliminate this legal side, and insist on remedies that we can use, we are going to be forced into all of these things. And I don't know how. I don't see it going any other way. We're not going to ohm ourselves into freedom. We're not going to have the right frequencies to make it work. We're not going to sit on a rug somewhere on the top of a rock on a mountain and make that happen. This is going to take a mass of people that are working, and the only thing I can figure is not to insult anybody on what they think is important. Like, I can tell you what to do. Just choose something. I don't have to choose. Just get in, be another one to be the example. Learn how to write the 15-minute letter or something and teach other people, even that much. I mean, I know I talk a lot, and I talk on maybe stuff that's kind of out there, maybe a lot of stuff you agree with, but if it's not relating to traction on the road somewhere for anything, it is something somewhere, I'm wasting my time. I've wasted your time. And we're not. Ultimately, the point is, regardless of the waste of that, is we're not going to see the change but the hardship. And markonthebeast.yahoo.com, you can see a change. We all sit like bumps on some log somewhere, some mushroom near the log. How is that going to change anything? I don't see it happening. I don't see it changing more than where those with a plan have and are driving it. So I hope I've said something today that inspires you to take action, even as minimal as writing a letter a few minutes. Thank you to Grimner for what you do on RLM Radio, reallibertymedia.com, where you can find the Blogcaster, and you and Bo Diddy over at freedomsnetwork.com, folks. Those of you that are on the system using it, contribute to Bo and his generosity to come out of pocket initially to cover the server fees. I think they're around $300 or so. It's not free, that part. So, and we're all pretty low key about it, about the money. I'm sure that I know Grimner has been. So, and he allows me to come here to show up and do the broadcast. So all it is just me hooking on. So I thank him for all that, and all you all that support that. And Jules at UCY, thank you again for what UCY.TV. Thank you for what you do. And in the podcast, pastcast, whatever you're doing over there, in the original replay on Thursday for this broadcast. And terrestrial broadcasters, thank you very much. And one other thing that occurs to me on the YouTube, Vince also has transcripts now. You can actually, it's not accurate, not real. It's pretty accurate, but not real accurate. Sometimes there's some trouble in the transcript. It actually gives you a printout. Scarily, it's kind of a scary proposition. It gives me a printout. If I was to spend the time to go find it, it'll give you a printout of what I say, and it'll come up on the screen too. So Vince has done a lot of work on there, and I thank him again this week for promoting the broadcast. Any of you all can do the same thing where you are, how you are, and as you might do it, and get the word out. And again, markonthebeast.yahoo.com. If you have a way or things you want me to talk about more specific. Take care. I'll be here next week. Tech Diffs or Nature Willing.
Well, that's another lesson. I hope with today's information you can take it to those that misbehave. From behind the woodshed, leaving his mark on the beast, this is Hal Anthony. Till next time, journey with purpose.
what opening up a can of whoop-ass feels like.
Son, you just opened a whole case of whoop-ass.